Welcome to this new episode of the recap for the podcast. So let's start directly with the word hunt for As a Photo Collective. Since 2005, every month, the system pulls out 3 random words. This month, for the month of August 2023, it's few, green, and him. So basically those words are a pretext to go hunt photographs outside. So either you do it alone, try to figure out photos that would correspond to those words, or in small groups, or just post them on social media by adding the hashtag on front. Basically hashtag few, hashtag green, hashtag him. And of course, hashtag PCLLTV and the date. You can find everything on the website if necessary. But it's a great pretext to try to find inspiration and take pictures and then share them with others. And you can take pictures for 1 word, 2 words, or 3 words. It's a good technical amusement. So every month, and now we're getting used to having this episode where I will go through the invitees for the dialogues, both in English and in French, because the podcast also exists in French. So yes, and also the content of all the playlists on the YouTube channel, which are also about photography. And I will kind of quickly go through what I talked about or what we looked at. So let's first start with the invitees of the dialogues for the English podcast. You probably heard them already, but anyway, let's go back to those. First, we started the month with Mark Glaudemans from the Netherlands, where he spoke a little bit about his interest in photography, how he went into photography. He's an architect by training, but how he went from landscapes to fashion and portraits now. And he talks about his relationship to that magical moment of the photography, of the photograph. Then after Mark Glaudemans, we went to Australia with Nate Wonkitcharan, where he talks about his discovery of photography, his link to the Leica M cameras, and how photography is a way for him to escape, to be in the moment, and yeah, very interesting also episode. And the last invitee in English was Maximilian Heinrich. Many of you already know him. He's got a great YouTube channel about photography, analog photography, which is named Analog Insights. And here he discusses his reasons of photography, talking about his travel from music to photography and to sharing his passion for the art and the gear. Very interesting episode here too. And then we go to the French version of the podcast. So separate podcast, but same structure. And for the French version, we had also 3 invitees. The first one of the invitees was Pierre Morlaix. Originally a musician. He talks about he was in Paris when we did the dialogue. He talks about his discovery of photography, why photography became a passion, and the links to music, to vibrations, to visual sensations. And yeah, a very interesting episode where he talks about the fundamentals of his passion. Then we had Omar Al-Jiwari, a photographer, a French photographer, that discusses his reasons for photography, how he discovered photography by taking photographs for a wedding. That's the anecdote, and how he became passionate about portrait, about humans, street photography, and how he loves sharing the sensation. That was the second invitee in the French podcast for the month. And finally, Denise Carneiro Soares, who's a photographer who's Brazilian but also Swiss and lives in Geneva in Switzerland. And she talks about her relationship to photography, how it's a way for her to invest in the moment and follow her own sensibility, and also a way to share, to appreciate how you can share a sensation with others. That was the last dialogue for the month. So Yes, let's go to the playlist. So usually I start the playlist with Serial, where I talk about traditional photography, either digital or film, and my own, where often it's linked to testing new equipment, using cameras or lenses or films I'm not used to. So this month I went to Serbia in Belgrade and tested also some studio photography for the Hyper Diet project, where I have really a certain concept about artificial lighting, but I was mainly using a lens, 50mm TT Artisan tilt lens, and talking about the results, but also how I took pictures of Belgrade. Also, at the same time, I was in London and I was trying I had some films, some cinematic films, basically Reala from Fuji and Vision 3. So lots of details on my practice in normal photography. Then, as every month, I have MatNum, where I talk about matière numérique, digital matter, where it's basically talking about photography through the software of my smartphone. I develop my own photo software, and usually I talk about software, but for a few months I've been mainly talking about the experience of using my own apps to create photographs, to document traveling around the world. And yeah, in this episode I try to explain how I use my apps, how I try to transmit the feel of a new place, for example, Belgrade, for example, London, how using my different algorithms makes more or less sense. So that's MatNum, and how I also try to find inspiration for new software. Then after this playlist, those two playlists, of course, there's VanCam. VanCam, I talk about equipment. Basically, it's in general. So it started with an episode about some kind of a rant. Basically, there's this kind of saying that any camera is a good camera. There's no bad cameras, and here I try to talk about what I believe is it's not the case. I think there are some bad cameras, and so I have this kind of digression about my own perception of what it is to have a bad camera and why there are. Even so, I would like it that there would be no bad cameras. Then a second episode for the month, which was about the Leica M4 and M5, so the classic M4, and this kind of transformative M5. So I go into the small details and a few historical details about the conceptions of the two cameras, and then try to show in real what it means and compare both of them. So that was the second episode. Then again, a small rant. It is kind of thought that today we have reached enough ISOs in terms of light sensibility in new cameras with really high ISO numbers. But here I kind of rant around the fact that I don't think so. I think that if you go with lenses that are pretty open and want a certain style of photography, of course we have enough ISOs now for low light photography. But maybe some of us would like to do low light photography with very, very close diaphragms. So here I think we still need ISOs. And in this episode I talk about that. And finally, a last episode about technical stuff, where I talk about the Olympus XA1. Basically, there's a family of cameras from Olympus from the 1980s that started with the Olympus XA, the famous rangefinder, very compact, really a fantastic workhorse. Here I talk about the XA1, which is supposed to be kind of a mini XA, a cheap XA, but I think maybe it's actually a kind of a jewel. And here I talk about the technical aspects of this camera and show a few examples. So that was the last episode for that month of VanCam. And finally, AIs Hit, where basically looking at a famous photographer of the past or present, is a pretext to talk about the capacity of AI to understand photography. So every week I talk about one photographer, ask AI, basically for now ChatGPT, what the bio and the style of a photographer is, and then illustrate with the help of OpenAI, Dall-E and Midjourney. I used those two to create some works in the style of the photographer. And for last months, the 4 photographers were Jeff Wall, German Krull, Shomei Tomatsu, and Francis McLaughlin. So yeah, that's about it. Kind of a short episode today. I'm still trying to reformat all those episodes and make it more consistent and probably more interesting too. So something's coming up next month, hopefully about travel photography and landscape photography, with a little bit more of on the field, in the field production, but we'll see. And in the meantime, don't hesitate to post comments and suggestions either below or through the voice messaging system of the podcast. And yeah, catch you next time.